Joining me in the foyer of the House of Commons listening in, James Bezan, Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence. Paul Dewar is the NDP Foreign Affairs critic, and Ralph Goodale is the Deputy Liberal Leader. James Bezan, I'll start with you. As you just heard from Thomas Daigle, CBC News has learned 6 young Quebecers have left Canada in January to fly to Turkey, presumably to go on to Syria. Why didn't the RCMP stop these radicalized youths from traveling?
It's very disturbing to hear that these 6 youth were radicalized and gone out to join this terrorist death cult. Hopefully they're going to be safe, but at the same time they have crossed that threshold now of joining a terrorist organization. If C-51 was in place, there would have been more opportunity for intervention by RCMP, by CSIS, more opportunity for communicating between departments and agencies, as well as with the family to prevent them from leaving. And if we knew that, not that I know the details of the operations here, but if these individuals had become known to CSIS or to the RCMP or our police agency, they would have been put on a do-not-fly list because they were planning to go and commit terrorism. So the things that we have in Bill C-51 are the very issues that get at public safety and also making sure...
Well, how do you, in other words, if CSIS knew about them and didn't pass on the issue to the RCMP to revoke passports under the existing rules, what more would this new bill, why do you believe this could have stopped these 6 from leaving? What evidence is there that that would be more useful?
So if the RCMP and CSIS was aware of it, they could have intervened with the families. They could have intervened in making sure that they didn't have the opportunity to travel.
But they could do that. You know they can do that anyway. They can revoke passports now?
The idea of making things like preventative arrest as it stands today versus what we propose under C-51, it may not have passed the threshold. Again, not knowing the details of the case of these 6 individuals. But what we're talking about is making sure that we can intervene, that we can be preventative and stop these types of actions, and ensure that our youth aren't being radicalized. And you just were reporting, Evan, that the resources at the college may have been utilized. Well, again, under Bill C-51, we can actually go in and stop this type of radicalization and making use of the internet and websites and making things happen.
Mr. Bezan, I mean, the whole point of the opposition's critique is that you say stop the radicalization. There's literally nothing in the bill that talks about stopping radicalization. There talks about the ability of CSIS. CSIS can intervene. CSIS can, in fact, get involved, but it's not an anti-radicalization program.
Look, there's things in here. The first pillar of Bill C-51 is prevention, and it is to stop these people from becoming radicalized or following through on their ideas of radicalization. So that is the first pillar of C-51, and the sooner that we can get it to become law of the land, we can have more intervention and prevent this type of thing from happening.
Mr. Dewar, comment on that. The government argues this case is exactly why Canada needs the bill.
Almost everything Mr. Bezan just said has absolutely no credibility in relation to C-51. What has credibility is one of my colleagues had found out about one of the constituents involved here and brought it forward to government a couple of weeks ago, concerned hearing from the parents that they weren't hearing from government on taking action. What is absolutely 100% clear here is that the government is using these cases, which we now know they could have been stopped in the case of what was happening in Alberta when CSIS was tracking them. The question is one of resources and communication. CSIS, when they have this information, should be passing on the RCMP to involve themselves. But the government is using these cases, and to be fair to James, he said using a lot of qualifiers, might. When Thomas Mulcair brought this up in the House directly to the Prime Minister and said, give me one example where C-51 would have made a difference, and he could come up with this many cases, 0. And I have to say, Evan, this is why we're concerned. And just minutes ago, the Conservatives just shut down the committee that we're looking on C-51. They call it a filibuster. We call it a right to be heard. And here's what just happened. Minutes ago, the Conservative chair was overthrown by the Conservative majority on committee for C-51. They just shut down debate. That says everything about this government. It's ridiculous. They've limited debate to start with, and now just minutes ago they just overthrew the chair's decision, a committee chair, to say that we need to have all members heard, and they shut down
What
debate
happened,
just
Mr.
minutes
Bezan?
ago.
Okay, what do you
That's what
say
happened.
I haven't
Well,
heard.
they're not sitting right now.
As you know, the committee's been meeting on
Ridiculous.
one motion, talking about how many meetings they're going to have, how many witnesses are going to be appearing before committee
Right.
on the study bill C-51, and this has been going on since 8:30 this morning. So they're getting to the end of the day here. The committee has.
And what happened?
Well, they're going to have 8 meetings. They're going to hear up to 50
No, what
witnesses.
just happened, though, James? What did your members do?
At some point in time, you talked the motion to death. They talked the motion to death.
According to whom?
According to the majority of the committee. because
No,
the committee
according to your
actually
members who
defeated
overthrew the decision of the chair
No, they
to keep
defeated the bill.
No, it's not a bill, James.
No, that's the motion.
It's not a
They
bill.
defeated the
Understand what you're
motion.
talking about. It's
I
about
do.
democracies.
Jeez, I used to chair a committee. I know how a committee runs, Paul.
Your chair just got overthrown.
Like I can tell you that the filibuster is going on, and they just brought it to an end. Now at least the committee can get on with their work of actually hearing from witnesses and having the bill studied. So 8 meetings, 48 witnesses, plus the Minister of Justice, plus the Minister of Public Safety, and we will still be able to have clause-by-clause study after that.
All right, I want to bring in Mr. Goodale in this too. I want to get to the chairs, but Mr. Goodale, your reaction to this? You got these 6 Quebecers leaving. Let me just show you what Minister Blaney said about that today.
We all have a responsibility, and our studies clearly demonstrate that in 80% of the case, when an individual is willing to travel for terrorist purposes, the people around are aware or informed of that situation. So it is important to report it to the authority for the well-being of that individual, for not being further radicalized, and also for saving human lives.
Mr. Goodale, I mean, what's your view of this? Should the RCMP didn't stop these people? Do you think the new law would help that or not?
Well, I think what has tragically happened today, or at least what's tragically come to light today, supports the reasoned position that we have taken on C-51. There are some elements in the bill that will help to keep Canadians safer in dangerous international circumstances. The provisions on preventative arrest will make a contribution. The provisions on information sharing will make a contribution. The provisions that would make it more difficult to get onto aircraft would make a contribution. Whether or not they're directly applicable to these circumstances today, without knowing all of the facts, it's impossible to make that judgment. But those kinds of provisions in C-51 we think are supportable. At the same time, we have been critical of the fact that there is no de-radicalization plan here, and that is obviously something that was lacking in dealing with these 6 individuals. There is no provision of extra resources for either the RCMP or CSIS to make sure that they are doing their, have the tools to do the jobs that they need to do. And thirdly, there is no sufficient oversight at all to be able to monitor what the security agencies are doing, and did they allow something to slip through the cracks. Right. Oversight is not just to protect human rights, as important as that is, it's also to make sure that security agencies are performing successfully.
I just really want to get your real quick on this, the Public Safety Committee that Mr. Bezan and Mr. Dewar were just talking about. Now there's going to be 48 witnesses over 8 meetings. I know Mr. Dewar just reported that the committee's over for the day anyway. Are you satisfied with that number of meetings, that number of witnesses?
It's an improvement over where the day began, but I would think taking the time procedurally to make sure this committee does a good, thorough job, a day devoted to that or more is not an excessive use of parliamentary time. This is a serious piece of legislation, and everybody who has something to contribute to the debate ought to be heard and not shut down.
Mr. Bezan, let me quickly go back to you. You say that CSIS will get new powers to interact with families and communities. CSIS can already do that. They've done that in other cases. They already have those powers. They don't have the power to disrupt now, which you're going to give them. But fundamentally, they could have talked to these families. They could have interacted. You know, Minister Blaney said the responsibility for stopping radicalization is essentially on the families. I'm just not sure what more could this new legislation have done in these cases, or is it what the opposition is saying? You actually need a national de-radicalization program and resources for the police. You don't need new spy powers.
Look, Ralph talked oversight. We really believe strongly in having expert civilians provide that oversight, and we're going to make sure that that continues and are well funded to do that, to protect, make sure that one of the agencies are doing what we ask them to do, and that if there is any slippage on at any level, that they can intervene. Secondly,
you're talking about the Security Intelligence Review Committee, which has about 15 people, 5 volunteer members, 1 review. We don't know if they're going to get more money, and they don't do interagency operational oversight.
And you don't have to put that in legislation. This is budgetary issues, and of course we have a budget coming forward. We also go through the estimates. We're going to make sure that the resources are there to do the job. Secondly, on the issue of radicalization, the RCMP, police agencies across this country are working with communities to ensure that we are trying to stop radicalization. But Bill C-51 will help in that regard, because we're talking about making sure that we can go after those online sources and those individuals who radicalize in our youth. And this is going to be more robust under the bill than what is currently available.
All right. Well, okay, I got a minute here, and I know there's still questions about oversight. There's still lots of questions, but we're going to hear more from the testimony. I got a minute here, and I just got to put a question sort of to Ralph Goodale. The Prime Minister had an exchange with you today, and I think it's worth noting here, because he mentioned something when you were the finance minister. There was an RCMP investigation. You were cleared of it, but I just want to get your reaction. Here's the exchange so I can show our viewers. This is what question period's like right now.
This government's former employment minister admits wages have barely kept pace with inflation. The Bank of Canada says 200,000 young Canadians are underemployed and living in the basement. Is that good enough for this government?
Canada has one of the few middle classes in the world whose incomes have been going up, Mr. Speaker. That's the difference between economic policy now and back then when he was doing it and budgets were followed by police investigations.
What's your reaction to that, Mr. Goodale? There was a police investigation, this income trust issue. You were cleared of that, yet it was mentioned today by the Prime Minister. Can I get your reaction to that comment?
It's a demonstration of the shallowness of his approach to the economy, and the fact that he didn't have substantive answers to the questions that I put to him. Not one of the statistics could he refute, so he resorts to typical mudslinging and personal character assassination. That's unfortunate, because the unemployed in this country, the people who are struggling with a weak economy, they deserve better than that. They deserve substance, not a joke from the Prime Minister.
Mr. Bezan, you're jumping in there?
Well, I don't think that Ralph should be throwing stones in glass houses. We've politics sometimes get a little heated, especially during question period. At the same time, I think the Prime Minister made a very good point that we have an economy that has grown. The number of people that are employed now are over 1 million in high-paying full-time positions, and that we have the strongest middle class in the world.
That's the spin, but it's factually incorrect. It is factually incorrect.
No,
I just want to make sure we got that. James Bezan, Paul Dewar, Ralph Goodale, lots to talk about. We're going to talk about that committee on Bill C-51, lots of issues. I appreciate your time, gentlemen. I always do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.